Good morning. I'm Kristen McIntyre and I'll be today's service coordinator. I hope everyone's enjoying the Wassel weekend. The town and also North Chapel have been buzzing with activity. This morning, Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley will be giving today's reflection titled Receive. What does it mean to receive in this season of giving? But to start, we'll have some announcements. If you are new to North Chapel, welcome. And if you're visiting, please sign our guest book in the back. We still request that people remain masked during the service, except when you are speaking during joys and concerns. And Chloe is here to be with the children during SE today. Thank you, Chloe. We will have coffee hour after the service downstairs in the social hall, and masks there are optional, but please wash your coffee cup after. And there also is a healing circle today after the service. We are starting to organize for the Spring Fling auction, and there's information about that in the agenda? Order of service. And if you have items, please contact Mary Blanton and Diane. And the annual pledge drive is still underway, and we have bright envelopes in the back. The wreath sale is still going on, and you can purchase a wreath after the service. And also today is the last day to drop a gift in the box for Holiday Hearts gift drive. And I saw that right by the door as you walk out. Looking ahead, we have 2 Christmas Eve services scheduled, one at 6 p.m. and also one at 8 p.m. And we won't have a service on Sunday, December 25th, but we're looking for volunteers to help greet and also do contact tracing at the welcome table. So please contact us if you are willing to help out. Finally, please turn off your cell phone as we start the service. Thank you. With the busyness of this season upon us, I find these words from Thich Nhat Hanh helpful. Each moment is a chance for us to make peace with the world, to make peace possible for the world, to make happiness possible for the world. We will now have a brief time for meditation.
There's a note on the pulpit from Gina. It says, "Hi, good morning. I have a tree on a timer so that it comes on magically at 10:30 or so during the service." So someone outdid her magic, but can we just go like give her an ooh for like fun? Just like ooh. Just don't want to lose the magic. Sometimes the wind catches your sail in a surprising way and off you go. It catches your sail and it pushes you if you know how to receive the wind. An average sail knows how to receive the wind. What wisdom does this have for us? What is the key to receiving that breath of fresh air that all but knocks us over? That sudden gust that almost knocks us down. In our hymnal, it is written, "From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and by this we live." But what does this truly mean? What does it truly mean to receive? Once upon a time, I received the perfect gift. It was the single petal of a yellow rose. It fell from the rest of the flower when the rest of the flower hit the ground. It was all part of a beautiful dance rehearsal. Every time I have this memory, Peg, I think of you. I did not see the actual performance. I only saw them practicing for a while. I watched as one dancer struggled with the choreography. I watched how she practiced, gently placing her heel on the ground before her, stretching her back and reaching out with her strong arms as if across a great divide. I watched as the dancer learned where in the flow of movement it was easiest to breathe. I watched as she crouched over, her head facing downward toward the ground. I watched as she curled herself over the rest of herself right there on the dance floor, her back arching over, her head tucked down, her arms cradled in front as if she were carrying a child. And as all of this downward motion was happening, the opposite was happening too. Somehow she flung a yellow rose into the air. Suddenly all was still. All aspects of her body that had been descending suddenly stopped, and all was still. There was no sound, and nothing moved except for the yellow flower that first arched up and then fell to the ground, a single petal gently falling away. It left me speechless. It left me breathless. It touched my soul, and I took it all in as if it were the whole thing were a prayer. And it made me remember the importance of escaping gravity and receiving grace. Now, there's a gifted theologian by the name of Simone Weil, mid-20th century writer. In her book called Grace and Gravity, she writes, "All of the natural movements of the soul are controlled by laws analogous to those of physical gravity. Grace is the only exception." The dancer had flipped a yellow rose into the air, and every aspect of her body had been descending except for the flower. That moment was a gift, and I took it in gratitude. I received it, and it's now a part of me. Good morning, and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. What does it mean to receive? I have a practical thought on this question. The dance rehearsal I saw was like a sudden gust of wind. I almost missed it. I was lucky to see what I did. For the short time that I spent there watching, I was really captivated. How disciplined the dancer was, how strong, how toned, how trained, how disciplined, how practiced. I practice music all the time, but my art demands different things of me. Let's move this so I can see you all. It's different for different artists. It's different for different arts. For a guitarist, there are no unwritten rules about our bodies, about how we eat and what we wear, not like there are for dancers, to be sure. It's different for painters, and it's different for potters, and it's different for those who teach these things. In fact, it had been the practice of this one particular ceramics studio that the potters paced themselves, that they worked slow and deliberately. They were artful methodically. They were quiet, and they worked in deepest peace. It wasn't required of them. It wasn't a law, and it wasn't a rule. It was the practice. There was no ordinance to obey. There was no order to follow closely. There were no signs. There was no covenant. There were no behavioral accords to be guided by. In other words, the potters were not governed by an external boundary. They were not forced to conform or obey. They were moved to do so. They were moved beyond their words into something deeper, as if by the sighs and the silence of inner peace. And so they worked their wheels in a hush, in a quiet. And when the clay lost its slip, when it lost its supple quality, when it became brittle in their hands, and hands caked and dried with earth, with clay, each potter would reach out for help, extending silently a request by raising one's hand and stretching one's arm out for waters that the teachers would provide. And into the palms of their hands was poured these waters, clear and fresh, spilling a little between the fingers and dripping gently down the forearm and running like a thin stream until it gathered at the elbow and fell to the floor. And the potters received this gift with grace and with gratitude, with the largesse of that great expanse of spirit within us all. Imagine a range of mountains out west, land that leaps up, skybound and weightless, where the land seems free of the heaviness that weighs us down, free of the gravity of the cliffstone and the redwood forest, the force that they normally use to ground themselves, free of the gravity that whitewash river uses to find the sea. Gravity is normally the rule, but not for this inner largesse, not for the wind that fills our sail unexpectedly. Gravity isn't a practice. It's not something that we choose to do. We don't think about gravity, but it's always happening. Generally speaking, it's inescapable. They call it the law of gravity for good reason, and generally speaking, we obey, we conform, we agree, we behave. We let ourselves be guided. Yet sometimes there are exceptions. Sometimes something moves us. Something removes us from the heaviness and the weight. Sometimes something lifts us and we defy gravity for a little while, without danger and without consequence, without fear and without anxiety. We lift, we float, we buoy, we rise. Like moon and morning star, something inside of us does. Something rises and helps us to breathe a little more freely. Something puts the wind back in our sails. Something restores us and off we go. What puts the wind back in your sails? What restores you? A place like Big Sur in California restores me. It can restore you too if you're lucky enough to go there. And if you like that kind of magnitude and austerity, not everybody does. Do you know Big Sur, the national park in California? Big Sur will move you to silence if you like that kind of thing. If you don't, then not so much. But if you do, if it doesn't scare you too much, if you are drawn to it, then Big Sur will lend you its wings, with its lore and with its history, with its landscapes and its coastlines, with its vistas and its valleys, with its mountains that fall right into the sea. Something within us rises and we let it lift us up. When we take it all in, when we receive it in a holy kind of way. Now there is a poem about all of this. There's a poem called Big Sur Country, and I'd like to share it with you. Here it is. It's called Big Sur Country, where I live, and many men of letters have passed through. None have denied its beauty, but few have felt at home here. Old Henry Miller, city-born, burned his bald head brown trying to catch the color of the sun at Partington. Like Icarus, he failed and in the end retired to a cement maze south of here, more at home in an elevator than at those dizzying heights. And Jack Kerouac hitched his way along the granite coast with no real sense of belonging. Crawling here like an ant, he found the place a graveyard. The offshore rocks, tombstones, and a ghostly surf. On the road, running like a child in the dark, Hearing things in the bushes, he hurried north to hide in the mulch pits of Marin County. And Richard Brodigan has come and gone, and others drawn to and driven off by the size and the silence of this place. But Jeffers knew, that soaring-eyed old predator, sharp-eyed, he knew that if we could speed up time fast enough, we could see that the mountains are dancing and with us. Did you know that about mountains? That they are slowly dancing with us all? And when we are wise, we receive this dance. We take the hand of mountain and we follow its lead. The mountains are dancing, but they don't like disco. They only like music that is really, really slow. For millions of years, the ground beneath our feet has been in motion. It moves, and it moves us still. It rumbles, shifts, and pushes, pulls and crushes, stretches and leaps. When it pushes and crushes and leaps, this is the dancing of mountains. There's an old joke about young men in the Midwest. It's a heteronormative joke, but it applies to all of us, regardless of our gender. And it's true, this joke. I used to live in Minnesota, so I've seen it firsthand. They're a little bit shy out there, very humble, these people. So the joke goes like this. How do you know when a Midwestern man is sweet on a young woman? He stares incessantly at her shoes instead of staring at his own. Mountains are like Midwesterners. They are glad to ask us to dance, but it just takes them a million years to do so. Some of us are like men in the Midwest. Others of us are more like mountains. So the lesson here is that if someone or some mountain is asking you to trip the light fantastic, if a dancer's hand is being extended to you, will you receive it? For the dance of life is fleeting. It's super fun to boogie. This is what the mountains are telling us. Sometimes the wind catches your sail in a funny way and off you go. Once I stood before a mountain that was asking me to dance, and when I answered yes, it was fantastic. Cold, chillingly cold, but truly fantastic. Now, I learned to sail with my father on a tiny lake in central New Jersey. I wouldn't be more surprised if it wasn't more than twice the size of North Chapel's property. It was tiny. It was in a place called Turkey Swamp Park off Elton-Adelphia Road near Howell. I didn't know how much I had learned until the day that the mountain asked me to dance. The mountain that asked me to dance was Mount Pilatus in Switzerland. It could have been any mountain, but this is what it happened to be. Mount Pilatus reaches up 6,983 feet from sea level. It's stunning. It's beautiful, and it's stationed just west of the city of Lucerne. In high school, I was in a choir that took a trip that was led by Mr. Danielson, our music teacher. It was a trip to Europe, and we made this album, this album. And you can see, I'm going to do this for the camera. There were two big, huge choirs, and two black people on the. So I'm easily identifiable. So. Anyway, I went over there. Mr. Danielson was great. The trip was really awesome. Dancing with Mount Pilatus was the best part. I went over there with friends, with Stephanie, Sean, and Andrew and Joanna. There were a bunch of us from my high school, but there were 150 singers in all from high schools all over the tri-state area. We sang in famous places a little bit. We traveled around in buses a lot, and we got into trouble sometimes. The main way you could get into trouble was by being late for meals. That was a big no-no on this trip. So one day in the late afternoon, Andrew, Sean, and I decided to go sailing on Lake Lucerne. in the shadow of Mount Pilatus. We rented a boat, which was surprisingly easy, and we were on the water in no time, which was good because we did not want to be late for dinner. We ambled our way across the water. There wasn't much wind that day. Midway out across the water, Sean and Andrew decided to go swimming. I thought it was a great idea, but I didn't want to go myself. We weren't prepared in the slightest for swimming, but that didn't stop us. We had no towels. We were casually dressed, no swimsuits. Yet before I knew it, Sean and Andrew were stripping down, and we were far enough out on the water so that no one could see us. And they reached down and touched the water, and it was warm enough to swim on the surface anyway. I couldn't have talked them out of it if I had tried, but I didn't want to talk them out of it. I wanted to go swimming myself on Lake Lucerne, but I watched as they did in their underwear. Before I knew it, they were in the water. They both jumped in, one from either side at the same time. I must have been looking away for the moment because I heard the splash first. I didn't see them jump. I just felt the boat move suddenly, and both jumped in from either side. I heard the splash, which more than surprised me, but what surprised me so much more was the way the sailboat responded. Okay? We had been lumbering across the water because not simply because there wasn't that much wind that day, but because there wasn't that much wind that day, and because our boat was very heavy. We were dragging between 500 and 600 pounds across the lake. When Sean and Andrew went overboard, all that was left was 185-pound me. Well, back when I was 185 pounds. Don't laugh. Just kidding. The sailboat took off like a rocket, and I remembered everything from Turkey Swamp Park. I grabbed the mainsail line and pulled it in to get the proper tension. I cinched it down on the nearest cleat that I could find. I caught the wind. I shifted my weight inside the boat for balance, and I grabbed the tiller with my right hand so that I could steer, so that I could choose the course that the boat was going to travel as it took off like a rocket. I did all of these things as quickly as I could, and as I did them, without thinking, I came into control of the boat. But by the time I got control of the boat, I was about 100 yards away from my two friends. I became conscious of them only because of their incessant yelling. The water was really, really, really cold. Okay. Sean and Andrew had needed to get back into the boat immediately, so I came about, I turned around, I had to tack my way back to them, so they swam at me this way, and then they swam at me that way, and then swam at me this way. Lake Lucerne is a glacial lake. It was formed by the slow-moving river of ice many, many years ago. According to Sean and Andrew, it was still precisely that cold. I got back to them as quickly as I could, and they climbed in as fast as they were able. We were heavy again, and the glacial mishap had made it so that we were very short on time. So time was running out, and we were completely unable, even with our best telekinesis, to bring the shoreline more closely than it was coming under the power of the wind. Eventually, we made it back to dry land safely, but it was almost time to eat. We had only minutes, so we ran, half drenched, through the streets of Lucerne, laughing and panting and terrified. We got back to the hotel, and the rest of the choir was gathering for dinner. Mr. Danielson, our faithful music teacher, was shocked to see us running through the front door of the lobby, half naked, dripping wet, and having absolutely the time of our lives. I'm sure he was disappointed because we would have to be punished, and he loved us. He didn't want to yell at us and have to break us down, but he would be under pressure to do so from his other teachers. I'm sure that he was relieved and strangely proud of us when 11 minutes later, we entered the dining hall as the doors were closing in our gray pants that were not wrinkled, our shirts and ties, our blue blazer, and even the high school pin that they made us wear. We took our seats uneventfully as if the whole thing had been planned, as if we had known somehow, as if we had known deeply within us that sometimes the wind catches your sail in a funny way and off you go. It catches your sail in a way that you never expected, and it pushes you to where you never thought you'd go. The key is to be ready. The key is to be prepared for the breath of fresh air that surprises us and knocks us down. What fills our sails? Whatever it is, I hope that we receive it in grace, And I pray that we take it in gratitude, for what we receive with grace and gratitude becomes a part of us. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. May we have the courage enough to jump simultaneously from either side of the boat into waters that are freezing and around us, just for the joy of being here, for this fleeting dance that we get to have with life. There is nothing special about Mount Pilatus or Lake Lucerne. The same gift is at Silver Lake and at this mountain that is our lives. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.